Okay, let's get started. So today is May 31st, 2023. In today's AQAvit meeting, I'm gonna demo TRSS with Docker Compose. So let's look at the TRSS structure before we actually go into more details. So TRSS is basically a web application, and we have React client, and we have Node.js server. In the server, we have front end, which is the processor that responds for the client request, and we also have back end, which is responsible for monitor Jenkins job, which is the CI job, and then grab the data and insert the data into MongoDB database. So this is basically the structure of our web application. It's triage. It basically is a tool to help triaging. It provides a lot of triaging help features like filtering, sorting, display the grid view, showing the history, that sort of thing. So the motivation for this really is that it takes a while for people to actually configure TRSS and set it up. People have to install Node.js, MongoDB, and make sure that it has correct version and everything can work correctly. So recently I had to migrate from one machine to the other for the production server, and it turns out it has a lot of manual work. So because of that, we were thinking, well, can we leverage Docker Compose to help us to set up the TRSS environment? Because really it will provides lots of benefits, such as easy deployment. It will provide consistent environment, scalability, and version control. All that. We do have already have TRSS in the repo. The problem is that it's not set up for the production, and then we do want to cover different cases, and we also want to make sure TRSS is breakdown into different module or different service that we actually can piece together, or pick and choose which piece that we want to do. Given that, we basically had this issue created, and the proposal basically is that we have three main use cases. One is the dev environment, of course, that help us to develop new features, production environment, and then the PR build, where when people submit a PR, we want to quickly verify if the change works or not. And then because of that, we break down TRSS into 5 services. So on the database, Mongo, and then Mongo seed, which is a sample data. Of course, the server, the client, and also we add Nginx to connect port. So a quick view of this is my test file machine. So I grabbed the machine. Now you can see nothing is actually running. And then all we need to start to start the TRSS running in the Docker Compose is to run the npm run docker. And this command basically will start all 5 services we just talked about. And then we're gonna go back and let it run. Gonna take a while. I think. Give it a try. There we go. So it started. It has well, I previously set it up to monitor certain builds. That's why you see all the builds are there already. and then what to basically kill it, you just do Control-C. That will actually stop the container. And then let me wait for this to stop. And then I will show you what we did to the data is we actually output the data into the, not in the container, but outside the container. It's in the Mongo folder. So if I change this folder, let's do this. Rename this folder basically. If I start the Docker compose again, and then you will see that there's no data, because we basically saying that pointing to an empty folder, it does not have data. So the idea of this basically is to allow us to have the portability. Say in the future, I want have the data migrated to another machine. All I need to do is to have the data folder, and then I just need to spin up the Docker for the TRSS, and then we'll have all the data. So if I refresh this page right now, and you should see an empty page. Okay, here we go. So simple as that. We output the data into a folder. In order to support different use cases, we also have a different command associated with it. For example, we have provided sample data. So let's say if a user wants to just play with TRSS, but they do not have access to Jenkins, they want to see how it look and feel, and we can look at this file. It will have the Docker data. So this Docker data basically saying we're using a profile feature to basically have profile of data. In this case, we'll import the sample data. So let's go back this, Control-C again to stop it. And then we can run, Docker data. So it's the same thing, we can do npm run Docker data. So in this case, it will start up the client, the database, Nginx server, and then also will import, as you can see, from the console, it will restoring the data from the sample data.gz. I think still doing. There's some data from audit log as well. If I go back, here we go. So those are the sample data that we have. So this is a scenario where user want to, play with it, or even you want to test with the sample data with your existing feature. And this is a way of doing this for having the sample data imported automatically. Another scenario that we would like to support is definitely a development mode where let's say if you didn't change the server code and you only change the client code and you want to connect to the real production server and see what's going on, then what you can do, if you go back to this page, there is a Docker UI, meaning that we will only compile the React UI part, which is, if you go back to this, will be this part. And then it will connect to the existing backend. So let's kill this again. And then we do npm run Docker UI. Actually, I may have to clean it, but let's see if this works. Yeah, no. This actually required to recompile everything. So it's better to do Docker system prune first. Just make sure we don't have anything that's left on this disk that's confusing. And then we can do npm run docker UI. It's gonna take a while because this is gonna recompile the client. Enabled. And then this is gonna run on different port. There we go. You can clearly see now we're actually connected to the Adoptium Jenkins, or I would say Adoptium server, TRSS server. So you see that the data is from Adoptium Jenkins ci.adoptium.net. So this is basically example of you want to connect to production server data, production server like a backend, but using your own front end. So that's that. So let's jump into just a little bit detail into Docker Compose YAML file. As I mentioned that we have Mongo seed, server, client, and Nginx. That's all configured in this file. And then we have profiles that help us to basically pick and choose which one we want to do. There's data, meaning now we want to insert the data. There's a production, that means we would do a production setup, what we need to do. And then we also have a flag to tell whether we should connect to, in this case, Adoptium API or not. And then for the production server, there's additional point, I guess, is that for production server, we should use port 80. For the development server, it doesn't really matter, I guess. For production server, we should use port 80. And to achieve that, basically we did another Nginx configuration on top of it. So on my TRSS machine, what I did is I have Docker and Docker Compose installed, and then I also have Nginx reroute. This is only, if I can find a file here, 2 lines. Basically, it's listening to port 80 and then reroute it to the port that we want. So this is basically the one that I have on the product, extra setup in the production server, in order for us to use the port 80 because it's privileged port. And then the rest of them is pretty straightforward. There's a Docker file inside of each folder. So on the server, we have a really simple npm CI and run npm start. And also on the client, we also have one Docker file as well that will actually compile and run, compile the React code. And then that's about it. Any questions? What I hope this to achieve is not only that for that production server, we do not need to set up based on the playbooks and then have to maintain the playbooks and then worry about, oh, there's additional manual work that we have to do. But also I want to use this to cover the PR build. So the idea for this is that we can have auto trigger the PR build or command trigger the PR build. Using the GitHub workflow, we can run this and then deploy user code and see how, so the both contributor and committer can see the changes live. So it will really help them to, catch any defects or anything like that. So that's basically it for this demo. Any questions? I think that's the only topic for this meeting. And well, I guess if no more questions, we can end the call. Thanks a lot for joining. Have a nice day.